Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very, very special event tonight. Tonight is a special ImpEx tasting. Before we get started, I want to thank a number of people for making this event happen. First and foremost to our two guests from ImpEx, Mary Barthelt and our old friend Joshua Hatton. Joshua flew in for this, so woo-hoo. Other people who need to be thanked for tonight. We need to thank Joshua also for arranging with Warehouse Liquors to give us the space for tonight, which is a big deal. So thank you very much to Warehouse Liquors. Okay. And also, we will be finishing before they're closed. So if you like anything tonight, go downstairs. They will be offering a 10% discount. For those of you who are remote, we're going to work to see if we can make that discount work for you as well if you're not here and you want to come and buy. I can't promise anything, but we're going to work with Warehouse to see if we can do that. Other people I'd like to thank. Very, very big thanks to Elhan Orhan and Michael Nolan for donating the glassware tonight. Thank you very much. For those of you who are remote, I also want to give a big thanks to our pouring team. The way that you end up getting stuff and that we end up shipping olive oil to you is that we get together at an undisclosed location that shall not be named, Eric Leader's house, and we pour into the small bottles. We send them to you. The team that does the pouring is Michael Nolan, Michael Bloom, Eric Leader, and me. So thank you again to those gentlemen for all that stuff. And probably the biggest thank you is to the person with whom none of this would happen, which is Eric Leader. Okay? Okay. Tonight also happens to be Burns Night. Okay? That is a big deal. So I actually have a little poem with which to start. And don't worry, I did not write the poem because that is not one of the things that I do. A grace before dinner. O thou who kindly dost provide for every creature's want, we bless the God of nature wide for all thy goodness lent. And if it please thee, heavenly guide, may never worse be sent, but whether granted or denied, Lord, bless us with content. Amen. Amen. So tonight we are going to be talking about a very wide range of whiskeys. ImpEx has an incredible range. They have an incredible global presence. They keep adding wonderful distilleries. And before we get started talking about the whiskeys, I'm going to want Joshua and Mary to introduce themselves. Okay? So, Mary, if you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mary. I recently started working for ImpEx. It's an amazing importer with a very large variety of whiskey, which I really enjoy. Previous to that, for about 7 years, I was running the beverage program at Cherry Circle Room and Milk Room and Game Room. So if you're local in Chicago and you went to any of those places 7 years ago or pre-COVID times, then you had a cocktail that I helped create. So yeah, that's me. That's a lot of my background. I've been in this industry for over 20 years, doing this, new to this side and new into the supply side, but enjoying it and meeting new people.
Thank you. Joshua?
So I'm Joshua Hatton. Chicago is very near and dear to my heart. I've been coming here since before I was in the whiskey business, at least a week out of every month. So it's nice to be back. I've been with ImpEx since 2015, but I've been friends with the people at ImpEx since the late aughts, as it were. And ImpEx has been the importer of single cask nation since I started that company with my business partner Jason in 2011. So it's a good relationship, a bit incestuous, but that's okay. But yeah, I love it, and I love getting to work with Mary and our team. I joined ImpEx because they give a crap, and they've got a great portfolio of distilleries who also give said crap.
Wonderful. But there's no crap tonight.
No crap.
Okay? No crap tonight. How's that for a segue? By the way, you should know that whenever we have these tastings, we always talk about the lineup and the order of the lineup. So I want to make sure everybody knows what the lineup is, especially those of you who are remote. And by the way, I'm going to ask you about this lineup and why we're doing it in this order, because usually we wouldn't start off with something that has some smoke in it. Okay? Mm-hmm. And we are starting off with the Water of Life film, the Undisclosed Island from Single Cask Nation. We're then going to Indri from India. Then Penderyn, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it even though it's a song by Fleetwood Mac. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of that particular Penderyn. We have M&H Apex. We have Ard Namerchin, and we also have Kilhoman. Okay, that is the order in which we'll be starting. And which of you is going to be talking about the Single Cask Nation Water of Life?
I thought I should do it, but then he decided that since he's an owner and he wants to create the cask,
Yeah.
We're very casual here about this. So Joshua, please tell us about this Undisclosed Island Water of Life expression.
Yeah, so this is actually the second collaboration that we did with the Water of Life film. Just by show of hands, and I realize those who are watching on screen can't see this, raise your hand if you've seen the movie Water of Life. Beauty. That's good. All right, there's a few people who haven't seen it yet. I highly suggest it. It's a really great film. So we're friends with the director and the producer, and we really got behind what they did, so we wanted to create some collaboration. So this was the second one that we did, but our first retail release collaboration, our first one was online only, and it was the first time where we married a multitude of casks. I mean, the company name is Single Cask Nation. So once you do 2 casks, you've screwed up the whole thing. Your marketing gets so pissed. Say hello to marketing, everybody. So what we did here is we have a relationship with a few distilleries, and one of these distilleries will sell us whiskey at a certain price, but without the name. And I said, okay, can we hint at the name of the distillery? She said, no, you can't even hint. And I said, can we say it rhymes with such and such? You can't do that. No. So I'm not going to tell you what distillery it is. I'm not going to tell you what island it may be on, but it is an island distillery. And you are correct. There's a bit of peat in there. So there's 6 casks in this bottling. All 6 of them are single malt whiskey matured in first fill bourbon barrels, so it's first fill bourbon. The age of the whiskey is between 7 and 9 years. And 5 of the casks completely unpeated spirit, 1 of the casks lightly peated, and then we bottled it we cut the ABV, which we never ever do. We brought it down to 48.8, which we just thought was a good drinking, like open the bottle on a Friday, recycle it on a Monday ABV. You know. And
That's a good weekend.
that's a good weekend.
Yeah.
And Gil, I thought your question was a good one, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, of why we're tasting something, why we're leading with a little bit of peat. Tell you a quick story. We had Madhu Khanna from Indri come over to the States last year, and I had him in Boston, and we did a tasting where we led with Indri, and we ended with Indri. And that Indri came after some peated, like the McNair's Lamerique, which is a peated blended malt, and some other peated expression. I forget what it was.
And it held up? It held up?
It got Moorish, like it became a massive tropical fruit bomb.
Wow.
And so my hope is that after we taste this, and then we go to the Indri, you're going to see a lot of the fruit popping out.
Got it. Because it was interesting when I sent them the lineup that I thought it should be, and then they said, no, we're doing this first. I'm like, all right, well, they know better than I do, so we're going to trust you in this. Now, the funny thing is that I have guessed what this is, but of course Joshua will not tell me what it is, because he says, undisclosed island. It doesn't say Isla, although technically Isla is an island, okay? And that's where we can get messed up. But assuming for a second that it is a non-Isla expression, I personally think that it's Lechig, and again, he's not going to say, and I wish that we could see like him quiver or something like that. I personally think that it's Lechig, just because Lechig is Isle of Mull, so it's an island, and it's a peated expression from the Toblerone distillery. It's a little bit fruity, but I could be completely wrong, and I love your poker face. You're just not going to say.
Did anybody see the wink that I did?
It's awesome. So, Joshua, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting about Single Cask Nation picks is that on the bottles, they have these tasting notes in the form of a bar chart.
Yes.
Okay? I love that. Okay? Can you tell me what was the origin
Yeah.
of that bar chart tasting note
Sure.
scheme?
So we call it a flavometer.
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 Have you like patented that term?
Yeah,
Okay.
trademarked.
Flavometer.
The idea, the idea came from me. Are we far enough into these whiskeys that I could swear? I don't know where we are. I mean,
Yes.
we're whiskey one, right?
Yes. You can swear.
I may swear later, but I don't read, or I do read, but I've been told I suffer from dancing eyeballs. In that I get a bit of this, and then I move down to there, and I'm not getting the whole thing.
Okay.
And I argue that I'm definitely not the only one who just doesn't, who doesn't read the full thing, right? And so we thought, what would be a nice, quick, and easy way, scale from 1 to 10, what you think the flavors in this bottling are. The interesting thing is,
That one doesn't have
this
it.
one doesn't have
Right.
that.
But the Tormore back there, that's an ImpEx, right? That's not a single cast.
It's not a single cast nation.
right.
But yeah, so it's 8 separate flavors, scale of 1 to 10, right? Is it floral? Is it oaky? Is it smoky? Is it rich? Right? All of these things. And it just gives people an idea of where those flavors may be. Like, I like a little bit of smoke. Okay, maybe 1 to 2 points, right? That's a little bit. If it's 4, well, maybe I don't want to touch it.
One of the things why I think that that's a good idea, especially with single cask nation, is because you're doing a lot of distilleries that many people have not heard of.
Correct.
And so that's why it's an important aspect. One question I have for you before we go on to the other selections here. Is Greg Schwartz at all involved in the selection of this bottle? Like, what is Greg's involvement in bringing this to market?
You see this picture?
Yes.
I think he took that picture.
Hey, the goat.
The sheep.
The sheep.
The ram.
Okay, the ram.
No, he's really good in that he trusts our selections and trusts the blends or the marriage of casks that we put together. So he says that's your bag. I make movies, you guys do whiskey.
Nice.
So,
Very
it's just back to collaborating with a good friend.
Wonderful. Well, our first dram, can we just say cheers to Joshua and Mary here? Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So actually what I want to do is, I am going to, that's a great idea, Michael. For the people at home, I just want to make sure that you can see this label, Single Cask Nation. Okay, and you see there was the sheep there and all that stuff. And Kenny's getting excited about the sheep. Okay. All right. Now, I love you, brother. You know that I love you. Okay. Now. Right. So.
You shag one sheep.
You shag, right, and then it stays with you for life. So, we're already going downhill. Speaking of hills, let's talk about the biggest hills in the world, the Himalayas. Okay?
Wow,
So,
look at that.
Thank you.
You and those segues. Can we have a round of applause for
Okay.
Gil on that one?
So one word that we have heard many times in our group is the word terroir, okay? And when I read the description of Indri, I was thinking that this is terroir. This is Indian barley. This is at the base of the Himalayas. This is a distiller who used to be with Amrut. That is an amazing combination of things right there. So which one of you will be talking about Indri? Okay, very good. So we're now going on to number 2. Indri single malt whiskey. Okay. Please take it away. Tell us about the whiskey. Thank you.
It's so good. The nose on this is great. So like you mentioned, you're in the Himalayas. You're the northern part of India. So you have some crazy weather swings. You have from like 32 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit that you're dealing with there. So you're definitely getting that really nice warm weather, rapid aging that you don't always. Well, you've seen more now, and we'll see like when we talk about the M&H and stuff that we have, but it really lends itself to a beautiful whiskey that you're able to produce and put into a bottle much sooner than whiskeys that you're dealing with in Scotland. So that's a nice way to have it. This is from Piccadilly Distilleries. So Piccadilly's is basically the MGP of India is how I view it as to what they do, and they've been a bulk distiller for other Indian whiskey companies. They do a great job. Previous to them doing that, even though they have their finger in all sorts of pies, from entertainment to sugar production to all this crazy stuff that allows them to do something like this product, which during the pandemic, they decided, hey, we're producing whiskey. We've got it in barrels here. Why don't we put a whiskey out underneath our label instead of bulk distilling it everywhere? So that's how they came up with the idea of Indri. They were lucky enough to get the former master blender and distiller from Amrut over to their side of the country to help blend this beautiful expression, which is probably one of the older ones that you'll find on the market too. It's a blend of 5, 6, and 7-year-old whiskey. And each of those is getting a lot of wood contact from a different style of wood. So the 5-year, entirely ex-bourbon barrel matured. Your 6th year, you're dealing with 5 years of bourbon barrel maturation and then a year of Pedro Jimenez sherry, finishing essentially on it. And then you have a 7-year red wine matured that is all blended together.
And I see the color.
Yeah,
the color
well, that's where you're getting a lot of that color, right?
Right.
Anything that has that red wine cast, it's kind of like a little, I think of it as like a distiller's cheat, of it adds a little extra color to your whiskey. But it looks beautiful in the bottle, and it tastes good, and it does add some really nice flavors to it. So.
Can you tell me a little bit about the barley? So is it all
Yeah,
Indian
so
barley?
they're using 6-row Indian barley, which is a little different than the 2-row stuff that you're dealing with in Scotland, just because of the amount of sugars in it. So it actually produces probably about per ton, about 100 liters less of alcohol, just because of the grain and how it works. They are experimenting with some 2-row Indian barley that they're trying to grow in the hopes that they're going to get, it ends up being a slightly sweeter product too that they've noticed, the experiments that they've done so far. But yeah, they really want to do something and showcase what you can do with local products instead of bringing in, barley when they are able to grow it there.
And in that particular area, what's the angel share like, since you're dealing with such a strange climate?
You're dealing with anywhere from 10 to 12%.
Okay.
So yeah, you're
Even
losing.
at the base of the Himalayas, still 10
Yep.
to 12%.
Yeah, because they do have that really high swing of heat that happens, and so you're still getting a lot of that. And the other part of it, it's not that it's just temperature, it's humid.
Okay.
Like year-round, the humidity where they're at is really high too, so that's lending itself to how it's maturing and how much you're losing.
Okay. So this particular whiskey, this brand, Indri,
Yep.
what parts of the world is this currently available in for purchase?
I think it's in 32 markets.
I think so.
About that is
And it's
where
new to
they're
our
at.
market, though. It's new to the U.S.
Yes, yeah. Last year is when it launched, when Manu came. They started bottling during the pandemic,
Oh, okay.
which is a great time to launch a whiskey brand
Sure,
if
perfect
you
time.
want to ever launch one in the future, is to have that available to you.
No more pandemics, please. Thank you.
But yeah, no, it's done really well for itself. It's gotten a lot of amazing awards so early on in its career, I guess.
And
as a
can you
whiskey.
remind me also the price point on this approximately?
It's usually about $60 on the shelf. So it's a really affordable single malt.
Okay,
It blows my mind for that, what you get, and when you taste it and you're like, oh, this is amazing, you'd think yeah, okay, I'd buy this. It's probably $100, $90, $100 on the shelf.
And right now in the United States, how many different expressions of Indri are currentely available? Is this the only one?
This is it. This is their flagship.
Okay.
They are looking to add 1 or 2 others as core products. Ideally, they would also like to do some single barrels. In the future, they have a rum. That's
India
an
has a lot of
agricole
rum
style
and
rum
stuff.
there that they've got coming to market, which was that angel share on that was crazy.
96%.
Yeah, almost the entire barrel. It's crazy, but it's so good. It's amazing.
That makes no sense.
Across the 12 years that the rum has been in
Yeah.
cask, they lost 96% of what was in
Yep.
that cask.
Uh,
Or casks, plural. It
Wow.
was a multitude of casks.
But that's really good for the economies of scale there,
Well, I think that's
and the profit margins.
They're lucky that they have so many other things that are part of underneath their umbrella that they're able to put something out like this at an affordable price for people. I think that really makes a difference. for
When
them.
do you think we'll see other Indri expressions hitting the shores here?
I think, like you said, hopefully a year.
Yeah,
Right?
hopefully a year.
Interesting. That's a crazy price point, I have to tell
I
you,
know.
for this quality. And by the way, Eric, if anybody has any questions from there, that's fine. Our format can be a little bit different. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hand and I'll try to recognize you. Yes, Daniel. And then I'll end up repeating the question for everybody. Yeah, the ABV on this?
46.
Okay.
Yep,
So it's
46,
46
non-chill
ABV.
filtered, all the good stuff, no color added.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Again, it's delicious. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting because you took the guy from Amrut,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And so Amrut is well established here, Obviously, Paul John also very well established, do you have to fight for shelf space? You know, I'm curious. How does it work with the retailers? Because sometimes shelf space can be an issue.
I think it's such a good product that initially people look at it, they're like, oh, I have Indian whiskeys. They may or may not sell that well. But once people try it, it's honestly changed so many people's mind. And like all the whiskey shows that I did over this past year, we featured this. And hands down, this was the winner out of everything from our portfolio that people were like, oh, this is what I have to try. People were like, you have to go try Indri. And the amount of people who'd come up and say, that guy over there said I need to come over and try this. You know, let me try it. It was, yeah, it was a great
crazy.
reception.
For $60, that's crazy. Yeah, that's delicious stuff. Thank you very much. So which one of you gets to talk about Penderyn?
Ooh, the Rhiannon.
Ooh, and also to tell us how to pronounce it correctly, because I don't want to screw that up. So we are now going to Wales. Okay, we're going to Wales. Penderyn is a Welsh distillery, and it's been with ImpEx for years now, right?
We took on Penderyn in 2017, I want to say.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us about it.
So first off, the way you don't just say it, you have to sing it, right?
Oh, wait, hold on.
The guy with the band.
I have a face for radio and a voice for mute. Okay, you know, so you really don't want to hear me sing.
So it's Rhiannon, and so Rhiannon, it's like folklore, right? It's old Welsh tales of this legendary woman named Rhiannon, enchantress, named Rhiannon, and so Penderyn's been around since 2000. They've been distilling since 2000. So they actually, come to September, they'll have liquid up to 23 years of age. They have been for the past, I don't know, let's call it 8 years. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. They do this annual release called the Icons of Wales, and this just happens to be within that series. It's one of the Icons of Wales. Wales is known as, you know, the land of myths and legends, which is, if you're familiar with the Penderyn Dragon series, they have a whiskey called Myth and a whiskey called Legend, right? It's all sort of tied into that. This was a slightly unusual one. Before I go on about it, I'm going to ask people to raise their hands. Who here has had the Single Cask Nation Penderyn 8-year-old from the Grand Cru Bordeaux cask? 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. Okay. All right. So for the 4 of you that are nosing and tasting this, try to keep that one in mind as you're tasting this. So this is a marriage of cask that spent part of its time in Grand Cru Bordeaux and in sherry. And in some cases, they're taking it from Grand Cru Bordeaux and putting it in the sherry. It's sort of a mishmash. I don't know the exact recipe. I can make something up if you'd like, Gil.
I'm good.
Okay. But it's bottled at 46% alcohol. There's a funk to this one, which, you know, I always, when I'm presented with a whiskey that has a funk, maybe a slightly sulfury quality or like a dingy, like musty quality, sometimes that's bad, but sometimes when everything's in its right place, that's kind of a good thing. When it's a facet, when it's a part and parcel. What I love about this whiskey is that from nose to palate to finish, it's doing this roller coaster ride of flavors. And the more time you spend with it, the more you appreciate those little flaws as characters,
Right.
You know, which I quite like. So, oh, go ahead. You had a question?
Well, one question I have, though, is with respect to the bottle, okay, it's rare that we see an opaque bottle when it comes to whiskey. I mean, we've talked about that. We've talked about that with barrel and bottle, you know, and there's ceramic bottles. And, you know, Brett Pontani said you can't sell amber liquid from an opaque bottle, you know. So can you tell us a little bit about this? Because that's strange because we can't see the color with that bottle.
This is one of the more tame bottles that they've done. So I have a bottle of Penderyn that was honoring a Welsh poet with a typical Welsh name. There's 7 L's, 23 D's, and you know, you can't pronounce it, right? A couple W's just for good measure. But the bottle, which was shaped like a squat version of this, was covered in red velvet.
What?
Actual red velvet. So they like to play around. There's another one called Hiraeth that came out just late last year that's in full gold. So yes, it's unusual, but it makes you stop in your tracks and say, what's that? It's different, right?
Right.
So I think that's their approach. It's going to stand out on the shelf.
Right,
It's gonna
because
stand
I have
out on the
other
shelf.
expressions of Pandaren at home that are, you know, with the regular bottles that you can
Yeah.
actually see and all that, so you
Yeah.
can see the color.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful color.
Yep.
So why hide it? You know, when it comes to the sales process. Although it is a beautiful bottle, it's beautiful artwork and everything like that. So tell us about the barley that's in here.
So they're using just standard 2-row barley. There's not going to be anything special about it. I don't know do you know the variety? Is it Laureate? Yeah, we think it's Laureate. I would argue what's special about Pandaren is less the barley and more the process.
Okay. How so?
Up until 2013, they were getting their wash, so basically a beer, from Brains Brewing in Cardiff. And then in 2013, they put in their own mash tun and their own washbacks, and they started creating their own. But from the very beginning, they used this type of still called a Faraday still. And they're the only distillery in the entire world that uses a Faraday still. And it's a combination of a copper pot still and 2 columns, a column on top of the copper pot and a secondary column just to the side of it, which you'd say, well, I've seen that at local distilleries. You may have seen it at Few Distillery, you know, things like that. This is slightly different. It's, in a way, not as customizable as those stills, but when they distill the spirit comes off at 92% alcohol, which is damn close to vodka.
Right.
However, I would argue in every single one of their offerings, you will taste spirit-driven notes of berries and apples.
Yeah. Well, it's very fruity. And it's a very fruity flavor.
Right? So it may be this old still that's not very customizable and so on and so forth, but they're creating a very flavorful spirit that's also light and kind of easy and approachable.
And what about the barrels that we're dealing with here?
Right, again, so there will be sherry casks, Grand Cru Bordeaux casks, and a lot of that will have started its life in bourbon.
Got it.
The other thing that I want to mention is they're the only distillery in the UK that has an all-female production team.
Really?
Yep, 2 female distillers, and their blender is a female as well.
Wow.
Yep,
That's fascinating.
it's super cool.
And has it always been that way from the beginning?
Well, I mean, they also had Dr. Jim Swan that
Okay,
helped
right.
them, and he helped.
Well, he's
train
helped a
them.
lot.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
It's a lot. Okay.
But yeah, it was one of these things where they put an ad into a newspaper. Hey, we're looking for an employee, and it just happened to be women who passed all the tests that they need to do what they do.
I'm going to throw out a word that you hate, okay?
Oh,
You know what
Gil?
word it is. You
Gil?
know what word it is. No. But I'm not going to say it with respect to this whiskey, okay?
Okay.
I want to ask you why you hate the word smooth, okay? If you know Joshua, you know that if you ever describe a whiskey with the word smooth, he's just not going to talk to you for the rest of the day, okay? All right, so tell us, why do you not like the word smooth?
Can I be brutally honest?
Of course.
It's a really lazy shortcut.
Okay.
Because there's more going on. If you just say, oh, that's a smooth whiskey, and you move on, I guess in a way that can be okay if you're just hanging out and you just want to have a nice drink and watch TV or hang out with friends. But if you're doing what we're doing here and you're exploring the whiskey, if you just start off and say this is smooth, then you don't afford yourself the possibility to explore the texture, to explore some of the spice or lack thereof that can play with your own perception of what smoothness is. So if you don't use that simple shortcut, you say, okay, all right, there's an oily texture. All right, that's protecting my tongue from the alcohol, right? And it just allows you to think about it more.
Right. You know, it's funny because you have to almost like use your inner thesaurus to come up with words.
And
to describe things
they went
sometimes.
extinct like millions of years ago.
Touche. Very good. Yes.
So my question is that a lot of times when you age, I've tasted juice aged in Bordeaux cask, there's a slight tannic flavor. This is a great tannic flavor. I don't taste the tannins here.
Okay, let me repeat that. Is that he was saying that sometimes when he has whiskeys that have been aged in a Bordeaux cask, he gets sort of like the tannic flavor, and he's not picking that up here.
Yeah, I remember when we were at Brooklotti and we tasted that Rothschild cask, and that was just like full-on tannins. I remember that. Yeah, you know, I think there's two things that can go on. First off, it's 46% alcohol, so you're diluting it a little bit. You're spreading out those tannins, so maybe it's not as forceful. But I also think it could just go simply back to the palate of the master blender, Ista Phillips. I know if I were blending this, I have a real tough time with tannins. I don't drink a lot of bourbon or rye simply because sometimes it could just be too aggressive. Same with red wine jam. I don't do a lot of it. So I would look to blend that feature, that those types of notes out, if it were.
Yeah, because I'm getting a lot of like green apples. You know, I'm getting like green apples, a little bit of
Spirit-driven
yeah.
note. That's a
Thank you
spirit-driven
very
note.
much. I'm getting some spiciness, a little bit of heat, okay, in the mouth, but not going down. You know, it's a very interesting jam. It's very drinkable. A little bit too easy to drink. You know, I can see myself throwing it down and not being happy about an hour later, but you know.
Or very happy. Huh?
Right, or very happy. Yes, Kenny. Yes.
What's the price point?
Price point.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. You know, somebody will look it up and we'll report back.
It's larger than a bread basket.
Yeah. Very, very good. No,
It's below 100 for sure. Below 100.
Yeah. I don't remember.
I think it's like one of those like 99.99.
It might
Like I
have
said,
been.
below 100.
Yeah, and 10% off today. You know, so yeah, I don't remember because I bought them. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was a few weeks ago that we ended up buying them. So let me also ask you a question about Penderyn in the ImpEx lineup. Okay, so the countries from which you are currently importing. All right, you have obviously Scotland. Okay, you have Wales, Israel. Okay, India. Where else do you have right now? New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Okay.
That's the Pocono Distillery.
I saw some recent posts about that. Okay.
England.
Okay.
The
The North
Spirit of
British?
Yorkshire Distillery.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a brand called Filey Bay, but it's the Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery, and so that's an English distillery.
Japan.
Japan. Is that it? Does that cover our bases?
Yeah.
No, we don't have any. No
No,
U.S.
we do have the U.S. We have beer. Well, not whiskey.
But it's not whiskey.
Okay, so actually,
whiskey.
there's something funny about that question. That's a great question. So about a year and a half ago, when we interviewed, actually it might have been almost 2 years ago, when we interviewed Sam Filmus, okay, we asked him that question, are you thinking of maybe adding an American distillery to your lineup? And Sam's answer was no, and I said, why not? And he said, because we like to win. Okay?
I love Sam Filmus so
I
much.
love Sam. Sam is a great guy. He's so competitive, but he sounds so calm. But he said, we want to win. And he felt that the American market, you know, the challenges of the American market and actually winning in the American market would be such, you know, such a difficult process. He's like, you know what? We're really good with what we do.
Yeah.
We import good stuff. But I'll just never forget him saying, we like to win. I was like, wow, what an answer.
In that Russian accent.
Yes. And by the way, if any of you end up going to San Francisco and want to meet Sam, please contact me, contact Joshua, contact Mary. He is a wonderful host. He's a great guy. And if you ever go to San Francisco, there's a wonderful whiskey shop. It's called the Whiskey Shop right off of Union Square. And Sam is there almost every other Saturday?
Yeah.
Pouring?
Sometimes
He's there all
every
the time.
Saturday. Yeah.
He's there all the time pouring at the Whiskey Shop in San Francisco off of Union Square. It's a wonderful place, and he's a great guy, and he will give you time. He's just generous. He's magnanimous, really. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah. Agreed. I can't.
But he's never been to Israel. How's that for a segue?
Yeah, he's not a very.
How's that for a
That
segue?
is
How's
a
that for a
very good
segue?
segue.
Thank you.
Before we segue over to that,
Segui.
Michael Nolan was kind enough to check the World Wide Net Web, and he found that Penderyn Rhiannon is around an $85 bottle.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
That is not bad at all. That's great. That's wonderful. So I'm curious, of the two of you, have both of you been to M&H in Tel Aviv?
Just me.
You've been there? You have not been there? Okay, because I was there last year, and I had a wonderful tour with Dana.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
And Donna,
Donna,
yeah, Donna. And it was just wonderful. If you're ever in Tel Aviv and you want a tour at Milk and Honey, M&H's in the southern part of Tel Aviv, right near the sports stadium and a little bit of an industrial area. And it's funny, you start walking up and all of a sudden you start smelling the barley. You know, it's like it's in the air, even though it's like it's this nondescript warehouse. And then you walk in and you're like, wow.
Yeah. You get
Yeah.
walloped by it.
Yeah, you get wild
Yeah,
by it. It's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, and then they have this great tasting room. And one thing that's great about the tasting room with all the casks there is that you'll see casks from other distilleries. I saw a cask from Few.
Yep,
Okay?
yep.
Because they're aging some of their stuff in some of the Few barrels. Okay? So it's funny when you walk through there, you'll see that stuff. It's fascinating. But the story behind this next one, this is a crazy story. Talk about terroir, okay, and aging stuff. So then let's have Mary take it away with M&H Apex. And this one's a higher proof, right? The Apex line's a higher proof.
Yeah, so when you're tasting it, be careful. It is at cask strength. This one is 56.2, so it's got a little heat. It's amazing on its own. Feel free to add a drop of water after you taste it, though, as is. But the entire Apex series line that they do really focuses on not only terroir, but wood and how it's interacting with their distillate. And this is an amazing expression of how those two combined can make such a beautiful spirit. He'll talk more about the actual portion of the Dead Sea where it is aged, which is the lowest point on Earth. It's also incredibly hot, which is why this one, when it was produced, was 24% angel share, I want to say, on this one.
Yeah,
it was really
24%
yeah.
angel share.
Yeah, on this one in particular because of the heat and the humidity that you're getting there. But yeah, they just took various barrels, various cask sizes, everything. They put them on top of a hotel roof in the Dead Sea, and they just set them there to age.
Okay,
And
so-
do its thing.
So M&H, most of the stuff is being aged in Tel Aviv.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Tel Aviv, it's not, I mean, it's hot, but it's not hot like the Dead
No.
Sea hot. Okay. So these casks that they took down there, how long did they have them in the Dead Sea area?
It's only like 3?
No, it's a 50-50. So they almost, can I use this?
Absolutely.
Oh,
So, most distilleries will use different types of casks for finishing, right? Adding in different flavors. M&H are using a climate zone as a finishing cask, right? I mean, you're going from Tel Aviv where you have an angel share of 9 to 10%, somewhere around there, and then when I was there in June of 2019. It was around 100 degrees every day and more humidity than you can shake a stick at. And then we went to the Dead Sea, and it was close to 50 degrees Celsius. And
That's about 122 degrees.
there
Yeah,
you go.
that's
There you
what it
go.
was.
And so because of the angel share that Mary had mentioned, 25%, they're using that climate to affect how the whiskey tastes. And even more so, one of the things that I hope you'll pay attention to is the texture of this whiskey. When I was at the Dead Sea tasting from the casks, the thing that I found most interesting is that the viscosity, the oils on the liquid itself, were through the roof. And if you compare this to some of the other bottlings, you'll see that. So something about that climate affects the whiskey in the cask to give you this incredible viscosity. So they'll age half of its life in the Dead Sea and half of its life in Tel Aviv.
And also the legs on this.
Yeah.
It's got great legs, and one of our favorite words here is mouthfeel. Okay, that is one of our favorite words, and this does have a very significant mouthfeel. Okay, it coats. It's like you have the whole, and I haven't added any water to this because I don't feel like I need to.
It's really good on its own.
Right now. So the question is, does the evaporation affect the legs and the mouthfeel?
I feel that it does. I feel that it has to. That's the one difference. Well, it's not the one difference. So there's two differences, and Mary mentioned it before. In Tel Aviv, they're warehousing everything in a warehouse. And in the Dead Sea, all of the casks are sitting atop Harrod's Hotel in chicken wire fencing, like literal chicken wire fencing. So it's not just the the climate there, but it's also the fact that it's open air warehousing.
Right.
So imagine all the salt that's in the air. If you raise your hand if you've been to the Dead Sea. What does that water feel like? Slippery, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not suggesting Dead Sea water's getting into there, but there's something going on there. There's, who were we talking to earlier today? It was Gene earlier today. He was talking about 2 casks that he was looking at that were filled the same day. They stayed in the warehouse for X number of years next to each other, and you taste them side by side, and they're totally different. They're wildly different. And the fact of the matter is, we can come up with all sorts of stories as to why this tastes like that or why that texture is like this. There's like Hogwarts is happening in cask. It's just, it's magic.
Actually, I have a question about the casks. After the whiskey is removed from those casks, I assume that they can't use those casks anymore. I mean, those conditions probably do something to the casks that would probably hurt their ability to be reused, right?
Yeah.
They are doing some second fill, but I don't know if they're using those casks.
Okay.
I think when Tal was in town, they said they aren't. Also,
Okay.
just because the air and how it affects even the metal portions of it really eats away and prevents it. So then over time, it's not going to be as tight of a barrel, and it's going to cause some issues
Right.
with it.
But by the way, one thing that's really interesting when you go to a whiskey show, not in the United States. So a year ago when I was in Tel Aviv, I happened to be there during Whiskey Live Tel Aviv. And of course, M&H was there and Golani and a few other people. And what was really cool, imagine this, something that would never happen in the United States. At a whiskey show, they actually had barrels there. And you could, if you liked it, they would remove whiskey from the barrel and sell you a bottle of that right there, okay? They would label, they had 200 milliliter bottles, okay? They would take it out. They actually had a sealer right there, okay? They would put a label on it, and if you like that cask, you can buy it right there and then, okay? Absolutely fascinating. Something that just would never fly here, okay? What's that? No, the 2 Israeli distilleries that were there, Golani was doing that, and M&H was doing that. Yeah, they were both doing it. Now, obviously, there were other distilleries, like Loch Lomond was there and others. They didn't have barrels there for obvious reasons, but but the Israeli distilleries, they had that. It was fascinating.
So cool.
Wouldn't it be great if we could do something like that here? It would be heaven.
It would be amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be absolutely amazing. It would be absolutely amazing. And the other thing, too, about M&H, if you ever get a chance to meet them, the guys involved in M&H, they're hilarious, okay? Tal and Tomer, first of all, they have amazing endurance, okay? They could drink for hours on end. They're incredible.
Yeah.
What's it like to, because I've seen you travel around with them in different parts of the world. Well, what is that like?
The day starts with a Guinness.
My kind of guy.
I would argue that between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., Tal probably has 4 Guinnesses. Wow. You go to the distillery. Did you get a beer at the distillery? They had the tap right on site.
No, Donna was pouring me so much whiskey I couldn't even think of beer. And gin. She was also pouring me gin, too. That aged gin, that aged Levantine gin.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff.
yes.
Yeah, they're just, this is their passion. They're Israelis are amped up people anyway, right? And so they just carry that wherever they go. Yeah, it's wild, wild fun.
Yeah, they're great. At Whiskey Live, at one point, Tal says, "Come here, taste this." I said, "What is it?" And he said, "The Loch Lomond guy, it's what he had under the table." So I didn't know the Loch Lomond guy well. I just met him, we were chatting. And then Tal came up to me afterwards and he said, "Here, have this." I said, "What is it?" He says, "Loch Lomond 35.
Ooh, there you
Okay,
go. Yes, please and thank you.
I was like, "Yes, please and thank you very much." It was absolutely incredible. It was wonderful stuff. But that's the kind of people they are.
Yeah.
I had just met Tal. I mean, we had emailed and texted and stuff before, but in person for the first time. And then he hands me Loch Lomond 35.
There you go.
Okay,
It says
yeah.
a lot about Tal.
It does
right?
say a lot about it. Yeah. So we have Paul Barrett is asking a question, and then I'll repeat it after Paul says it.
I apologize if this is snarky, but I believe it's Loch Lomond as the song. That's all.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. It's really funny. For those of you who've been in these many times, you know that usually when we're not doing the hybrid, I'm online. I get corrected all the time in the chats, okay? You know, I remember like I mispronounced Aberlour, and all of a sudden I get this text from Lynn. In big letters, it's Aberlour, you know? She just totally corrected me. You know? Once I said that some distillery was in the wrong state, and I get ripped by half a dozen people, you know? So it's like, it's okay. It's all good. We're all friends here. So thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. This one was important because someday I hope to share a dram with you on the Bonnie shores of Loch Lomond.
Okay, very
there
good.
you
So
go.
Paul said he hopes to share a dram with
I'll
me
take
on
the
the
low road.
Bonnie shores of Loch Lomond. Okay. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate that. That's wonderful. Great stuff. I have a question about M&H also. Just want to bring this up. So one thing that's interesting about M&H, and I'm curious if this also applies to injury as well. Because of the rapid maturation, because of the fact that, you know, things aren't going to last there for 5, 10, 15 years, M&H has been coming out with an incredible amount of different expressions, okay? And that, I would think, is challenging because there's so many of them. But at the same time, it gives them the ability to experiment a lot, okay? So how do you balance, you know, as the importers, you know, knowing that you have a distillery that is every 3 to 6 months coming out with a new expression, how do you handle that in the marketplace with respect to customer education and things like that?
I mean, I think that's really it, is customer education, people learning on their own online, and us being able to do tastings where we can taste through the line. And I mean, the reality is we don't even bring in everything that they make as an importer. Like, there are a lot of expressions that are only available in Europe and not our market. So it's really chosen by Sam as far as which ones he's bringing in on a regular basis so that we're not inundated with every M&H, because they have the ability to play around so much more than a lot of other distilleries, especially in Scotland, because they can put whiskey on the market in 3 years and it tastes as amazing as some of the stuff that's aging for 6 years, let's say, in Scotland. So that's why they do so many different types of barrels constantly. Like, they did the Arts and Crafts series with like the beer barrel finishes and stuff, and they constantly, and like, if you go down there, when you talk to them, they'll even say, like, we'll put something in a barrel, we'll taste it, it's terrible, we get rid of it.
Right.
And I was like, what? You just throw it out? Like, that blew my mind, as opposed to going to any distillery here and having somebody like, yeah, we just threw it out. We didn't want to
No,
bottle
that
it. It
doesn't
wasn't
happen.
good enough to bottle. You're
Yeah, that
like,
doesn't happen.
you find something to do with it.
Right.
I'm
And
like, okay.
now, so so I know that the M&H has the Elements line, and then they have the Apex line.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the Apex is primarily a higher proof. Okay. All right. Are there any other lines as well? Because I've seen now that you have the single cask line that's been coming out as well.
So there's M&H Classic, that's their sort of flagship bottling, and then the Element series. The Element series takes the classic recipe and adds an element onto that. So they'll add sherry cask matured whiskey, ex-peated cask, ex-red wine cask. So those are your elements. And then Apex, like the one we're having now, the Dead Sea, these are small batch offerings. It could be 2 casks, it could be 5 casks. It's always going to be different. It's going to be unique, like the pomegranate cask, if
Right.
you're familiar with that one.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And then they have an extension of the Apex line, which is going to be coming out, which will have a black bottle. Just to piss off Gil. Just to piss.
And Brett.
And Brett. And anytime they do a black bottle, that's when Tomer or Tal have found a cask that they just feel is remarkable. It shouldn't be married with anything. It should just be highlighted by itself.
Okay.
And so we'll see that. And I think your point is a good one. They're a young distillery coming out with a lot of products. How do people manage that? I think it's good to remember we're not the only people managing it as importers or distributors or as shop owners. They're a distillery trying to manage that. And so they're so young, they're still finding their way. They're still figuring out who they're going to be, what they're going to do, and we're all part of watching that evolution.
Okay, wonderful. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go on to a rather newish Scotland distillery. Okay, Ardnamurchan. Ardnamurchan. Please help me with this.
Paul, do you want to correct him here?
I would, but I would be afraid I was wrong.
Okay, so Joshua, how do we pronounce this?
So, as someone who knows a Hebrew word or two, I feel as if you should be able to do this.
Huh? With a huh?
Ardnamurchan.
Ardnamurchan.
Yeah, there you go. Ardnamurchan.
That sounds
say it like that.
That sounds like more. Actually, sounds more Klingon than Hebrew. Ardnamurchan.
Yeah.
You know, it's like.
Let me get my Barthelt. Yeah.
Yes. So, this is the distillery is the Adelphi. Is it? So the company is called Adelphi, or is the
Yeah.
Adelphi Distillery?
Correct.
So this is a Highland distillery, and this is a peated expression from the Highland Distillery.
Correct.
Okay, please tell us about it.
So, Adelphi has been an independent bottler since 1993. But the Adelphi name came from a historic distillery called the Adelphi Distillery, right? So that's where it came from. And as the independent bottling company ticked along, as many independent bottlers do, they say, well, how do we get constant access to liquid, not just for ourselves, but that we can maybe trade, right? If you think of any malt distillery, all malt distilleries within Scotland are based on the blending system to feed your Chivas Regals and your Johnny Walkers and so on, and they're trading malt whiskey with one another, right? And so as an independent bottler, if you're not making your own stuff, you're always reliant on someone else. To say, okay, let's make our distillery. So they have some land in Ardnamurchan. Ardnamurchan is in the west coast of Scotland. There's a single track road to get to the distillery. It takes you about an hour to go up that track road to get up to them. Yes, this is a peated spirit, but they run peated and unpeated whiskey. And so this is a marriage of peated and unpeated whiskey in a series of casks. And if anybody had a phone and wanted to scan this QR code, you scan that and it will tell you everything, the type of grain, how long the mash was, how long the fermentation was, the person who bottled it, the person who distilled it,
Wow.
the cask numbers, everything.
And this is it it's Highland peat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So the other peated Highlands that I know, let's see, so there's Balekin from Edgedower. There's
Yep.
also Ben Reich, okay?
Benriach, yeah.
Ben Reich, whatever. It's all good.
Can we just go through the alphabet of distilleries and I'll correct you along the way?
I love that video of Brian Cox.
Oh, he's great.
Brian, was it for GQ he did that, I think? Brian
so.
Cox Brian Cox, the actor, did an amazing video where all he does is sit down in front of a fireplace pronouncing the names of distilleries. And it is wonderful. It's like each one is a YouTube video that's like 7 seconds long, and that's it. And there are about 50 of them. And it is absolutely wonderful. And obviously I need to watch it again. Okay? All right. So tell us a little bit, actually his Lagavulin comment, right. So when Brian Cox gets to Lagavulin, he drinks it, says Lagavulin hits you like a depth charge. Boom. And it's like, it's the only one that he talks about, okay? All the others, he just says the name.
Yeah.
And then I think in the words underneath it said this is his favorite.
Yeah.
But hits you like a depth charge. Boom. It's wonderful.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely wonderful. So tell us more about this. So the casks,
Yeah,
the
sure.
age, things like that.
So, so the distillery started distilling in 2014. And in fact, in 2017, I went to Scotland with Michael Nolan and with good old Jam, Jonathan over here. And we were at the West Coast Whiskey Phage. And this was my first time really experiencing Ardnamurchan. I remember the guy behind the table said, "Our spirit turns 3 years old tomorrow."
Wow.
That was 2017. Wow. So that was a really cool experience to be able to taste that as spirit, to talk to some of the people who were like, tomorrow's the biggest birthday ever, right? That was super cool. So the whiskey inside here, actually, hold on to this.
I will hold on to this for you. Oh, so you're actually going to do the scan? You're going to scan it?
Are you ready?
Oh, wow.
But the real question is, was it written to the blockchain?
It is, yeah, it's blockchain.
Okay, so what Eric just asked is whether or not this is written to the blockchain, and the answer is yes, it is. And I don't even know what that means, but it's all good. Okay?
Is that Jenny from the blockchain?
No, that's the chain gang.
Oh, that's the chain.
Yes.
So this whiskey has distillate that dates back to 2014, all the way up to 2015, and it looks like it's about 75% peated spirit, 25% unpeated spirit. There are 5 sherry hogsheads in here, and the rest are bourbon barrels.
Oh.
Do you want the cask numbers too? Because I could do that.
No, I'm good. I'm good with that. I got, you know, there's something about here, barbecue. I'm getting barbecue. Okay, there's something about it, you know, the taste and the smell. It's like it reminds me of smoked meats. I know that you don't do the smoked meat thing, but there's something about it that reminds me of brisket, you know, ribs, something like that. It's got some good smoke flavor to it, but at the same time, it's sweet.
It's sweet. So that's the sherry. That's the sherry coming through.
Yeah.
This is, like, if you want to think, I'm not going to use the word terroir, but let's use longitude. Is longitude this? Up and down? All right. So let's look at Scotland longitudinally. Isle of Skye, Isle of Raasay, which is just next to that, and just keep going south and you're going to hit Ardnamurchan. So what's on Isle of Skye? You've got Talisker, you've got Toravaig, and then just off you've got Isle of Raasay. And all of them, and I would argue including Ardnamurchan, have this spicy, salty style of peated whiskey.
Right, there's like a maritime.
A total maritime thing, and that is true West Coast Scottish style of whiskey.
It's wonderful. So, price point? Here we go again.
Michael's
Somebody's gonna
gonna-
have the price for us.
100.
Last time I saw it on the shelf,
It is 100.
Yeah.
Okay, $9.99. And the ABV on this
This is cask strength.
this is cask strength.
58.7.
58.7. So $100 for a cask strength. It's a good cask strength.
And it's not just that, you know. So many people will have issues with non-age stated whiskeys because A, you don't know the age of what's in there, and B, the Scotch Whisky Association actually doesn't really want distilleries to let people know what's in there. Them doing this through the blockchain system to just have a system of traceability allows them to show you what's in the bottle. So yes, there's not an age statement on the whiskey, but just scan the bottle and you'll have all the information you need. And most importantly, is it delicious? The answer to that is yes.
Okay, can you also tell me something about the bottle here in the labeling? It says AD/0222. So is that February of 2022? Is that what we're dealing with here? Anno Domini, February of 2022. What's the deal?
Yes?
Yeah, that's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's the bottling for it.
Okay. So are all okay? So will all the Ardnamurchans have that type of?
So they used to, like, if you see their core line of Ardnamurchan AD on the shelf, the stuff that you'll see out still now might have a numbering system on it, and that's what it was, like, as far as like bottling dates and things like that. But they have moved away for that for their core lineup, and so you'll just see Ardnamurchan AD out on the shelves. They did say most likely for like the cask strength and the single one-off stuff, it'll still be labeled similar to this with like the dates and stuff on it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact of, back to what I was saying about M&H, who they're still discovering who they are. Ardnamurchan was discovering who they were through the various batches. They finally got to a recipe that they thought, okay, this is the recipe we like. We don't need to batch number this anymore because we're going to get a pretty consistent end product. And so that's the idea. Eventually these numbers will go away, but until they do, you get to track that evolution of that specific bottle.
You know, it reminds me of the old Ball Blairs. Okay, remember the?
Oh,
you know,
yeah, the vintages.
Yeah, the vintage
Yeah,
Ball Blairs because
yeah.
they used to have the year on it.
Yep.
You know, that's interesting. So it's almost like, are these collector's items in the future? You know, I'm curious.
Yes.
Yes, but then again, I don't collect. I drink. So
There you
know,
go.
not-
That's how you do it.
I enjoy
Yeah.
it. So
Enjoy.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't collect it. So no, this is wonderful stuff. So can you tell me a little bit about the unpeated expressions from Ardnamurchan?
So there really aren't any unpeated expressions.
They're not in the market now.
So the only time you get unpeated is when they do a single cask.
Okay.
So all of their batched products until now have been a marriage of peated and unpeated.
Okay, and what about the casks? Tell us a little bit about the casks that these are aged in.
So this is predominantly bourbon cask aged, and there's 5 sherry hogsheads in here. That's where that sweetness is coming through, that light
Okay.
fruity sweetness.
Yeah.
Yep.
How many? The question was how many casks go into each batch?
Roughly, it looked to be about 35 casks.
Okay.
Which by comparison, you know, if you're familiar with Kilhoman Macker Bay.
Oh.
Well,
was a
this
nice
isn't
note.
Macker Bay,
That's not Macker
but
Bay,
this,
no.
it's not Macker Bay, but it was a decent segue,
Not
right?
bad.
Decent segue.
Segui.
Segui. You know, when they first started doing their batches, they were 30 cask batches, and now they'll do up to 60 cask batches. So that's a pretty decent size for a smaller distillery.
Okay, great. Michael Nolan has 2 questions. Oh, man down. Michael, your question? All right, so we have 2 questions for Michael.
A quick question. The first quick question is going to be with M&H, is Single Cask Nation going to do some more single barrels?
Okay, so the first question was, will M&H...
It's going to be pomegranate cask.
Okay, we'll sing. So the question had to do with Single Cask Nation and M&H. Is Single Cask Nation going to be bringing more M&H? And also talked about the pomegranate cask as well.
So the answer is yes. Single Cask Nation will be doing more M&H. We love them. We love our relationship with them, and just we think the absolute world of them. So yeah, long may that relationship continue. We have selected one ex-white wine cask, Israeli white wine cask. We've selected an ex-beer cask, which is absolutely remarkable. Jess selected that one. And then there's one other one that I don't want to say what it is. It may or may not be pomegranate. Could be something else.
Okay. And you had a second question, Michael?
Second question is a little more in depth.
All right, you know what? Here, take this.
That's Michael
You
off
didn't want to
camera,
try to
everybody.
repeat this. ImpEx has really evolved in the last 4 or 5 years. And I mean by evolved in the sense of the distilleries that they've brought on. And I see a real progression. And I want to get your take on it a little bit. I mean, Ardnamurk Loch Lee, and just announced Wolfburn. Isle Rossé also. I mean, there's a lot of great distilleries that they're just coming into their own now.
Yeah.
And they're being brought into the U.S. by ImpEx. Has this got to do with what your proven track record with Kilhoman, where you've been with them for a long time? You've done a lot to build Kilhoman in the U.S.
Yeah.
Are these guys saying, hey, these are the guys to go to in the U.S. to kind of help us bring our brand along there?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And you did answer it. I mean,
All right, next question.
I mean, but in all seriousness, you know, bringing in Kilhoman in 2010, this 3-year-old whiskey, no one knew and no one cared. Even worse, no one cared. So it was a slow job of growing, gaining interest, so on and so forth. And it took us, what year is now? 2023, right? So 13 years later, and I can't even begin. I'm not going to go through the case numbers, but it is amazing how much Kilhoman America drinks. Like, it's remarkable. If I knew how much Kilhoman we sell in the U.S. 13 years ago, I would have said, you are effing lying.
How much is represented by this room? You know?
Raise your hand if you've had Kilhoman before. Thank you, everybody. So yeah, so the fact that is a fact. It's hard work, but we understand how to do it. I think we understand the whiskeys and understand how to tell that story, hopefully in a way that is understandable and people appreciate. We're also thankful for the fact that the liquid kind of speaks for itself, and we're not the only people who have done this hard work. There's plenty of other importers and distributors who have done it, like Raj Sabharwal from Glass Revolution and Amrut. Like, he brought Indian whiskey to the U.S., right? So there were a lot of people doing a lot of hard work. And thank God the drinking public are starting to get it now. So people are coming to us because we've been doing it for so long, but thank God the American public is getting it now.
I think it's your hair. I love the hair. I think
Thank
it's
you.
the hair.
Thank you. I
That
think it
helps
is the
them.
hair too.
Yeah, that's good.
A lot of brands have been added to
Yeah, right?
So you have to think of the since we have
Coincidence?
the Jewish connection here, the whole Samson thing. Don't cut the hair.
Don't cut that. Yeah, it's a
the hair.
Samson thing. Don't cut the Jufro.
Don't
Yeah.
cut the Jufro. All right. So let's go on to so pronounce it for me, please.
It's
Pronounce it.
Kikkoman, like the soy sauce.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The teriyaki of Scotch. Yes, please tell me. So,
I think
please.
is it your turn, Mary?
Okay, now it's your turn. I think it's Mary's turn.
I've had too much airtime.
It's okay. Hair time?
I've had too
Hair
much
time? Hair time? Okay. All right, so this next one is a warehouse exclusive. Woo! Okay, that's a big deal. We're the only place in the world where you can actually buy this particular bottle. Yes. So, can you tell us about this particular expression of Kilchoman and also about the distillery itself too?
Yeah. So this I know you did the tasting notes with Gene on it. Yeah. So he can do the tasting note portion. But this is an 8-year-old bourbon barrel single cask, old Buffalo Trace bourbon barrel that you're getting there.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah, it's good.
This is good.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the process of selecting a barrel with Gene?
I could talk to that one.
We sort of knew this is how it was going to go, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Yeah.
The process of picking a barrel with Gene is actually, it's not as hard as you might think or unusual as you might think. Here's the beautiful thing about me coming to Chicago for a while, a week out of every month, is for a week out of every month I would spend 2 to 4 hours with Gene, just hanging out, drinking whiskey, drinking what he picks, so I get to understand his palate. He gets to drink the cask that I might have brought in or some of the special editions, and we got to learn one another's palates. And so when we started this Kilchoman single cask program with Gene, and this is his 4th now, from the beginning, I would go to the distillery and I would pre-select casks that I thought would fit Gene's palate.
And
Because
how many would you pre-select?
2 to 3.
Okay.
2 to 3.
Okay.
Yep.
So you really, you pretty much had it down as far as
I have a
his
general sometimes he throws curveballs,
palate. Okay.
but I have a general understanding of his palate.
Okay.
And so this one was the first time where he went a bit more traditional when it comes to casking. So he's done a Madeira finish. He's done a full Oloroso maturation cask. He did 100% Isla bottling that was all of its time in a PX sherry cask.
And this is bourbon.
This is bourbon. This is straight up bourbon, ex-Buffalo Trace bourbon barrel, mash bill number 2 if you want to get real geeky about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful.
That Madeira cask is one of the best Kilchoman I had anywhere.
So, can I...
And I was going to ask about like the story behind that cask.
Okay, so let me repeat what Elhan just said. Elhan just said that the Madeira cask is one of the best Kilchomans that he's ever had, and he wanted Joshua to talk about that a little bit.
I think that's your whiskey. So here's the interesting thing about that Madeira cask. The year prior to that, Kilchoman released their Madeira cask matured. And I was very open about the fact that I didn't like it. It's not that it was a bad whiskey. It didn't fit my palate. It wasn't a combination I enjoyed at all. And so when I went to the distillery to select some casks, we're going through and I'm with Anthony Wills, the owner of the distillery, and we're tasting this, that, and the other thing. And he says, I've got some really nice Madeira casks that I think may work. And I said, Anthony, I love you, and I love Kilchoman. I didn't like the Kilchoman in Madeira. It didn't fit my palate. He said, understood. Everybody has a different palate. Just give this a go. I really like them. What do you think? And we went over to them and just tasted the whiskey straight from cask. And like you, I thought it was remarkable. And so it was actually only one Madeira cask sample that I brought to Gene. There were other cask types, but it was just that Madeira sample. And of course he picked it. And that year, that was my number 1 whiskey of the year. Like
Wow.
I went from disliking Kilchoman and Madeira to thinking that was the best whiskey I tasted that year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like if you ever taste a whiskey from anybody, even outside the ImpEx portfolio, and you say, "Oh, I don't like that," don't give up. You may find that you do like it, whether it's a different casking, whether your palate changed, whatever. Don't give up.
You know what I do sometimes when I open a bottle and I don't like the first dram, I sometimes just close it and put it in the back of my shelf, and I come back to it, 6 months, a year later, and all of a sudden sometimes I like it, and
We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
It really can change the flavor profile of your whiskey, even if you just crack it open. And that little bit of oxidation can really change it so that it fits your palate over time, which is amazing, especially when you're drinking like really old whiskeys. That little bit of air in it really changes it up. It's amazing.
Yeah, it does. It does make a difference. But one question I have, and this is for the benefit of the people who do not have warehouse liquors in their backyard. So obviously, when people, this is only available here. Of the standard Kilchoman line, okay, if they can't get this, what would you recommend that they try? So especially the people at home who are tasting this right now who like it, who aren't here, which of the Kilchoman line should they look for?
That's a good question. I think the closest you would get as far as their core range goes is likely Macker Bay.
Macker Bay? Yeah.
Because it's 90% bourbon, 10% sherry, so you're going to get some of that sherry sweetness, some of the heaviness going on. It won't be as bright and citrusy as this one, but it'll get you there.
It's funny, when I was in San Francisco and we met with Sam, and I was with a friend of mine, he had never had Kilchoman before.
Right.
And we went through a whole lineup. We're drinking a bunch of great whiskeys, and of course, he had to bring out Kilchoman. And my friend loved Macker Bay so much. I think that he has already ordered 8 bottles to be shipped to him from the whiskey shop. He lives in Pennsylvania, which has a horrible system and a horrible selection. It's an LCB state. And he just keeps ordering from the whiskey shop. He just keeps calling them up. And when he orders, he gets Macher Bay, and he also gets the Mendocino Spirits 1-year aged gin. Okay?
Nice.
So he gets both of those.
Yeah.
And he says that I've really messed him up. It's like, he says, this is great stuff, but really have messed him up with this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's wonderful. So I want to ask you a little bit about a question related to what Michael was asking before, right? And we have all seen in the news over the last several months the ridiculous amount of money that's coming into the whiskey world.
Yeah.
Okay, we've seen what has happened with Wilderness Trail. Okay, we've seen with Balcones. We've seen all this stuff. All right. I'm curious with respect to importers. Okay, well, we also even saw with Samson and Surrey. Samson and Surrey, which was
Heaven Hill now.
which was Few, Bren, and Widow Jane, and now they're part of the Heaven Hill family. Right. You guys are independent. You make your own decisions. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the future of ImpEx? If somebody comes around waving a big check, I know how tempting that could be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, part of what you do is you bring your art and your science to this. I'm sure you guys have been thinking about this and talking to each other.
That really is a question for Sam Filmus. but here is what I would say. ImpEx is his life. He lives and breathes it, and I think no amount of money coming in from the sale of it would fill that void if he let it go. He lives for this stuff because he wants to win.
He wants
to win, Gil.
Okay, he wants to win. Let the Wookiee win.
Let the Wookiee win. Let the Wookiee win.
Yes.
Joe, can I just ask the same question?
Yeah, hold on. Let me here, John. Let me give you the. Okay.
Let me ask that same question sideways, because that's what my specialty is, looking at it sideways. If they were bought, would they get access to a larger amount of different types of whiskeys, and so that would kind of pique his interest?
But if they got bought, he would be out of it, so it wouldn't matter. Well, that's true. Not necessarily. I don't want to start thinking of answers that I
that's all fair.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. So we're at 8:14 right now. We said we were going to be going to about 8:30 or so. And so what I want to do is I want to open up to questions. But first, I have been criticized several times again by this group for breaking protocol and skipping Eric, okay? Like the last 2 or 3 times I opened up for questions, and all of a sudden Brian Nagorski yelled at me and said, "You forgot Eric." So Eric, I'm going to give you the microphone to ask any questions that you have for either Mary and or Joshua.
Well, I'll keep it simple. What new and exciting things can we see from ImpEx coming in the next 6 months?
I'll let Mary talk to that.
So he mentioned, and we've mentioned briefly, the Pocono, which is the New Zealand single malt that will be in market soon. You can find it now, but it just came into market recently, is the Olive Rosé stuff that came in. It was mentioned by somebody, the Wolf Burn is going to be new to our portfolio. It's not new to the States. It's not even new to the state. If you go downstairs, you'll see a couple bottles of it on the shelf, but it's new to ImpEx importing it. We've got some amazing new Japanese whiskeys that are coming to our portfolio. We did lose some of the brands that we were working with, but we've added some new amazing ones that I love. I've gotten to taste them all so far, and they're really good, and they're really good examples of whiskeys that are distilled and matured in Japan. So you're truly getting what you want out of those single malts. And then the rice whiskey portfolio that we do have, the next round should be coming in soon. And like with the Fucano, that'll harken back to some of the early releases that they had that will be coming back to what we bring into the States. And then a little more mezcal. You know, a little more mezcal to add into the mezcal that we have in our portfolio for that.
One thing?
Yeah.
Just really quickly, one thing back to the Japanese whiskeys. With the two that we have coming in, one's called Ikiko, the other one's called Hakata. Ikiko is a combination of barley and rice. Hakata is 100% barley. But if anyone in this room has had the luxury of tasting Macallan or Glenfarclas from the 60s and 70s, imagine that with maybe a slight dash of salt, just a little bit of saltiness going on.
Wow.
That's what Hakata is doing, is this really old style of malt whiskey that is just remarkable.
But it's young, but it's
No,
relatively young.
it's the youngest is 10 years old, the oldest is 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
What do they do to achieve that?
Elhan just asked, how do they accomplish that?
So it's part of it is the koji process. So it's, we're in Japan, right? So they're going to do things a different way that may be a bit more traditional to them. I would argue, as wonderful as single malt is out of Japan, it's not a traditional spirit to Japan that was imported, if you will. Where the use of koji in the fermentation process is a more traditional method of fermentation within Japan, and it's the koji within that fermentation process that brings on that umami, that like earthy saltiness that comes through. So that's where you're going to get that from.
We're getting some good words here. Yeah,
welcome.
no, that's a good one. Eric, do we have any questions from the group online? Okay, those of you who are online, if you have any questions, please let Eric know. I'm going to give it to Daniel Pikus right now.
So really the same question as Eric, but for single cask nation.
What was the question?
What's coming? What's coming soon?
Oh, yeah, what's coming? Yeah, there you go. All right. Hold on, I'm chewing a cracker.
Okay, while he's chewing, I got to tell you something. Those of us who are in Chicago, the end of bin sales that we see at some stores, it's fascinating to me how many people still don't know how good the single cask nation stuff is, because your stuff still shows up on, pretty frequently on some of the end of bin, and every once in a while, I just walk in, it's like, I just have to buy one. I just can't help it. So take a look, okay? Keep your eyes open. It's there. Paul, were you raising your hand?
Well, hold on. I finished chewing my cracker so I can answer Dan's question.
Oh, okay, go for it.
So we have a retail release number 9, which is, it may be on its way to Chicago now. So we will have Wolf Island Take 2. So this is a second batch, same distillery, same cask makeup, same ages of whiskey, just a different batch and a slight, the flavor profile. It's kind of like, who was talking about Aberlour? And Lynn, you were correcting Gil on his pronunciation of Aberlour. Aberlour Abuna is such a wonderful bottling, and you get to taste the differences from batch to batch to batch. That's the idea behind Wolf Island Take 2. So it's a new batch. We'll have a 34-year-old Invergordon single grain whiskey from a refill sherry butt. And then there's a rum from the Darsa Distillery, Guatemalan rum. Anybody heard of the Darsa Distillery? Has anybody heard of Zacapa rum? You've heard of the Darsa Distillery now. So it's basically a single cask of Zacapa. And then we've got, did I leave any out? Yeah, then we have 2 bottlings that are double cask bottlings. One that's a Kalila, 7 years old, both refill bourbon barrels married together. beautiful Kalila, floral, salty, wonderful. And then finally an Inchgour, which was a marriage of refill bourbon and a refill bourbon cask that we put into a fresh Spanish oak Oloroso hogshead for 9 months, and then we married those two casks together.
By the way, from a pronunciation perspective, I was at an Aberlour tasting, and they said that it's for Abuna. It's because they say Abuna Matata. So
Abuna Matata.
So they pronounce it. So I actually remembered that from a tasting with them. They say it's Abuna. Is how you pronounce that. But
My, how the tables have turned.
there you go.
Bill is correcting
Hey, I
our
got one.
pronunciation.
I got one. Okay, I'm happy. I'm going to give the mic over to Paul Barrett now.
Thank you. All right, so mine kind of riffs off of Eric's a little bit too, and I think I heard a start to the answer. But I'm curious briefly about non-whiskey offerings from ImpEx and kind of what's coming down the pipe and whether that's something that is going to be emphasized going forward. I know we had mezcal mentioned. I'm also curious if there's going to be like rum in the portfolio or anything.
So we have some really great rums in the portfolio. So we recently, over the past year, started bringing in Lemon Heart. It kind of bounced around a little bit, but Lemon Heart is part of the portfolio, which is great to have another 151 option out there, especially when Bacardi stopped producing theirs, to have that, especially if you're into tropical cocktails and making those, having that available is great. We have Black Tot, which does some really great rums out of Elixir Distillers. So if you've ever had anything from Single Malts of Scotland, you're dealing with them. You're dealing with Ollie, who's still blending that rum for them. And then you have Rum and Cane Merchants, which is another independent bottler of rum, and he's doing some amazing things with blending different, like 2 different styles of rum together to create just really nice expressions that you don't see often out there on the market, which is that. And then we have the mezcal. We have some gins that are amazing. M&H actually does one of my favorite gins, the Levantine gin that they do, and it's just very unique because you have the Zatar. I probably always say that wrong.
Yeah.
But you get some really good herbal notes in there that you don't see in other things. You get some like black pepper spice and things like that in there. And then we deal with Herb Garden, which is amazing distiller, and they grow all of their herbs on their property there, and it's beautiful. There's no pesticides. There's just acres and acres of all of these amazing herbs that they're using and they're drying and they're putting into their stuff. And it's funny, like when we went to the distillery and we were talking to them, they were showing us like, this is our version of what we have. This is the version we make for you in import because of labeling requirements and things in the United States are so crazy that some of the herbs that they have there, they don't really have true names that they can transfer over, so they have to have a U.S. version and a U.K. version of stuff that they can sell there because they don't care as much as we do.
Yeah.
But
By the way, at M&H in Israel, they have a barrel-aged version of the Levantine gin, which we can't get here yet, and that I bought a bottle. It's incredible stuff. I should have bought several. It's that good. So Eric says that we have a question online. I'm going to give the mic to Eric.
Yes, Ariel, why don't you go ahead? And then William Myers, you can go.
Okay, so I have a few very basic questions. Is the Levantine gin available in the U.S.?
yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. For the Indiri, the Trini, the 3 wood, is that referring to the 3 different barrels?
Yep.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's for the Trinity portion. So Indri is, oh, sorry. So Indri refers to the 5 senses. Indri is Indriyana in Sanskrit, so like sight, smell, touch, taste, all of that stuff is what that's dealing with. And then Trini is, yes, for the 3 different types of woods that they're in there. So that's how you get their name and what they're called. And Indri is actually the location of the distillery that they have there.
Okay, and 2 super quick. When I get the funk in whiskeys, I'm generally finding that it's from whiskeys in sherry casks. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah. So there could be a multitude of reasons for that. One of the reasons, if you get a sulfury quality from it, is some of the large brokers of sherry casks, when transporting those casks from Jerez to the UK or to India or wherever, is they're putting inside there something called a sulfur candle. And the sulfur candle is to just kill any of the bugs, anything that could, bacteria that can grow. and sometimes it can be aggressive and it can add a sulfury, dingy quality to the spirit. And there have been some really aggressive versions of that where it's like you're drinking farts, and then and then sometimes it's just like a little bit, right, a part and a parcel, and it could be nice, right? So that's typically the reason that you'll find a sulfury quality coming from a sherry cask.
Yeah. I've gotten it in everything from bourbons to world whiskeys. Any chance we're going to see some of the higher proof M&Hs coming into the U.S.?
I'll be checking out the clothing store. No, sorry. It was a bad joke. We're all drinking.
Sorry, Mem and Hay.
So the question was, will we see more higher ABV M&Hs?
Well, that's the ImpEx.
That's
line,
the
right?
ImpEx
That's
series, yeah. So
Well, but when I see in the Appreciation Society, I'm seeing like things going to Europe that are 70%.
Oh,
Wow, that's
yeah.
crazy.
That's a very good question. And actually, the Dead Sea that we tasted today, 56.2%, that actually is not cask strength. So what Tomer is doing is he is diluting to the strength that he feels that whiskey's drinking best. Now, occasionally you'll see some single casks or some special smaller batch bottlings where the group that selected the cask or maybe the importer that selected that batch said, no, please don't dilute it. And then you may find some of that higher ABV stuff going on. But typically, if Tomer has his hand in it for the higher ABV stuff, he's going to bring it to the mid-50s to the low 60s to wherever he thinks is good for the whiskey.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
By the way, one thing about Tomer, too, for those of you who like finding rare bottles and rare casks, what's he called? The Tomer's Closet? Is that what he calls it?
I think so.
Yeah,
Tomer's
so
Closet.
sometimes every once in a while on Facebook he mentions this thing called Tomer's Closet, which are bottles in his own private collection that he hasn't opened yet. And some of them are reasonably priced, but he will ship them to different parts of the world.
And there are a few people in the world that have a bigger collection than him.
Seriously.
Very few.
Wow. That's good to know.
Yep.
That's very good to know. Eric, are there any other questions online?
We have two more.
Okay.
William Myers.
William Myers?
All right.
All right, William?
Hey, William.
Hey, Joshua.
How you doing, man?
Not bad. How are you? Happy
I am
Happy
excellent.
Robert Burns Day.
Happy Robert Burns Day to you, too. May your lum reek.
There you go. Hey, my first question is, I'm absolutely, I have to carry sponges around the house because I'm drilling so much on this double cask VSOP 32.
Wait, what? Huh?
Single cask nation 32-year brandy.
Did you say you have a bottle?
No. I want to know
God.
about
I'm like,
it.
how
I
did
sent
he get a
message.
bottle
I
of
said,
that?
hey, I wish. No. I texted Gil a photo, so.
Okay. So you want to know what's going on with that?
I want some. Once it hit and tell me the skinny on it. Tell me what you can't print on the label.
Okay, so that will go on sale, singlecastnation.com, in about, a few weeks. We bought two casks of cognac from a broker in Scotland. The cognac had been lying in Scotland for a couple decades at least. And we bought them, and we quite liked them. But I mentioned before, I'm a real tannin phobe. I don't like tannins, and they were a bit drying. So we took those 2 barrels, we married them together and put them into a first fill Spanish PX hogshead, and then bottled that. And the PX, and we learned that from actually Kirsty McCallum, who was the blender for Cuddy Sark. She was actually the person who redesigned the Bunnahabhain 12-year-old. She was one of the people and got it up to 46.2%. Super talented person. So it was her trick she told us about. Whenever she had a whiskey that she thought was too tannic, she would transfer it into PX, and the PX would sort of round out those tannins. So that's what we did. The cognac was a bit too tannic for us. We put it into PX for about 14-ish months, I want to say, and then we bottled it. Natural strength of 44.1%. It'll go on sale next month, and it'll be around $195 for a 32-year-old 1989 distillate.
Nice.
Okay. Hey, I also wanted to let you know that, well, just real quick. I have a bottle of Joshua's favorite Mortlock and Imperial behind me.
It's a good man.
And then I also wanted to state that Inch Darney is another mainland Scotch which is peated.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to know these sulfur candles. I might want to get one just for grins. Are these the Battles Greenhouse Sulfur?
I don't know. I'll have to check the sulfur candles. I don't know. I'm trying to think of funny things to say, and I don't even have that.
I'm intrigued. I might have to have a glass of Paxert to go with that.
So I'm so glad you mentioned Paxeret. And I know you like Paxeret. The Hakata is like old Paxeret sherry casks. So you're gonna like that. That's gonna be up your alley.
Got it. Are there any other questions online, Eric? Because I know Lynn. Okay.
Kobe.
Okay, we're gonna do Lynn, then we're gonna do Kobe.
Yeah, this question's for Mary. Mezcals, are you doing artisanal and specific agave types? I tend to go a little nuts when I can find a Quiche or a Madre Quiche.
Oh, we have both of those expressions in our portfolio. So it is artisanal that you're dealing with versus like the ancestral stuff. The ancestral stuff just has so many more hoops to get through, and it doesn't necessarily make sense for a lot of the producers, to be honest, to actually make a profit on it for what they do. But so we do Mal d'Amour, and they do a lot of really great ensembles. That's where like their juice really shines at. But they it's amazing on their labels. They'll show you everything and the type of agave and the genus and everything on the labels. But yeah, we have a really great Quiche and Madre Quiche. I'll let you know afterwards where you can find them.
Great, wonderful. You said we had a question from Kobe?
Yeah, Kobe, and then either Mary or Kathy or
Okay, all right, wonderful. So Kobe, take it away, please. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Gil, and thank you for everyone. Thank you, Mary and Josh, for everything. It's been really fantastic. Kind of pivoting off of the mezcal question, and I don't mean to trigger any of the Jewish participants, but eventually, eventually Passover will be coming up. Given the relationships that both you, Josh, and Mary have with M&H and maybe some mezcal labels, is there anything interesting in the pipelines Passover-wise for the Passover observant kosher community that we can really get excited about?
It depends on how far you want to go. If you're okay with agave that doesn't have a hechsher, isn't certified kosher for Passover, then we've got you covered. And that's sort of how I live my life, but we're all individuals. If you need, we're all individuals. Calm down. All right. But as far as kosher for Passover certified products, you won't find anything within the ImpEx portfolio. M&H did last year do a bottling called Suf, S-U-P-H, and it was basically distilled sugarcane juice. It wasn't a rum.
Okay. But what about like the dead drop? Because remember the dead drop?
So that's what I was going to get to. Yeah. Right. So you've got Thornton Distilling that does dead drop. Single Cask Nation every year does a rum by Thornton that's kosher for Passover, right. And we just selected one that was an agricole style rum that'll be really nice. So bottled at cask strength there.
And they also have just the non-single cask nation. Thornton has a non-single cask nation.
Yeah, the dead drop.
Kosher for Passover rum as well.
Oh, is it called dead drop?
Yeah. Yes, it's called dead drop.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. Yeah,
and they usually have that at they have that at the kosher jewels and some of the other kosher markets around here too. But the single cask nation one, it takes it up a notch.
Yes.
'Cause
Jewel.
I think
There's no
that's-
S on it.
And he says it too, yes.
Okay.
Well, then
Thank you.
Okay.
Single cast nation is cast strength, where the one from Jewel is proof down to.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, ours will be cast strength. Those
All
will
right.
be delivered.
We're going to take one more question from the Rosenblatts.
Yep.
Okay. So the Rosenblatts, can you please unmute? And then we'll wrap it up.
What can you tell me about the M&H Elements Apex single malt small batch, other than it's the most expensive on the list that I can find?
So, as far as the range goes, the Apex line will be the more expensive. And so the Dead Sea, which we had tonight, I think is around $115, $120, somewhere around there, as a guess. And that's likely the most expensive M&H bottling there is. Their single casks tend to be 95 to 105, somewhere around there. But that's going to be the highest, around $120, and it'll be the Dead Sea bottling.
Okay, what are you asking? So what can you tell me about the Elements Apex single malt?
Elements Apex?
So there's a delineation there. So there's M&H Classic, that's their flagship, and then you have 3 bottlings which are known as the Element series, and that's just four now. Well, four now, and that's also at 46%. And then you have the Apex line, and then the Apex single casks, and so they're really, a different series of whiskeys. I hope that clears things up a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
And if you have any other questions along those lines, just send them to Eric, and we'll pass them on to Joshua and Mary, and we'll get the answers for you.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So this has been absolutely amazing, okay? What I want to do right now, everybody, if you are so inclined, go back to whatever dram you would like to. I'm going back to the Ardna Merkin, because I think that's just absolutely incredible. I'd like everybody to join me in saying thank you and cheers to our special guests, Mary and Joshua.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Everybody, this has been a wonderful event. I want to thank everybody who made this possible. I want to thank Warehouse. I want to thank Joshua. I want to thank Mary. I want to thank Eric, of course. I want to thank Elhan and Michael, everybody else who helped put this together tonight. This has been absolutely wonderful. The recording will be posted probably within a day or so. This has, again, been a great time. I love these hybrid events. They are challenging logistically, but when they work beautifully. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
Cheers.
All the outline participants.
Hi, all my
Hey.
Including Jane and Becca that are sitting next to each other.
Oh, wow. Nice. Very
Hey,
nice.
one last thing.
Yes, Joshua.
Again, for Warehouse Liquors was so kind
Oh, yeah.
to give us this room. And were so kind to give us 10% off on these bottlings. Please help Mary and I feed our respective children. Go downstairs, buy some whiskeys, support Warehouse, and thank you all.
Right. Thank you all very much. Thank you.